gentle marketers. Welcome back to episode 86 of the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, the show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. I'm Sarah Croce. As always, I'm the host on this show, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a better way to market your business. Or you might also be a marketing impact pioneer. So that's someone who's working in an organization, maybe a B Corp, maybe another small organization who does business for good. Before we begin, another quick reminder that our next circle call is coming up on April 21st. So in the Gentle Business Circle, we are a small bunch, about 20 people, 20 gentle marketers who get together once per month to help each other in this journey towards a more gentle approach to marketing and business. Members of the circle come from a broad background of business types, sizes, and growth stages. We have business coaches and consultants, branding specialists, virtual assistants, life and health coaches, financial consultants, leadership coaches, marketing professionals, and many more. And there is no discrimination depending on revenue in the circle. So no need to be in the 6 or 7 figure club. If that's where you're at, great, we'd love to have you. But know that in the circle, we don't typically measure success by the number of zeros in your revenue. Besides very pragmatic business information, we also hold space for the human connection, so the doing and the being. We really create something new and different, a modern leadership model that's focused on the inclusion of everyone's unique life and business experience. So if this sounds like it's for you, you can check out all the details and sign up at sarahsandcroce.com/circle and choose the monthly investment that feels good to you and suits your current budget. So today's episode falls under the P of partnership, and today I'm talking to Cecilia Wessinger. Cecilia is an entrepreneurial ecosystem builder and founder of Mass Collaboration. Her work is centered on collaboration, equity, and community culture. As a certified cultural competency and unconscious bias facilitator, she moves conversations beyond diversity and inclusion to connecting, engaging, and belonging. Her entrepreneurship path led to winning startup competitions, a former lead organizer of the Kauffman Foundation's 1 Million Cups, and a multiple-year U.S. delegate to the Global Entrepreneurship Congress. In addition, she works with Future Agro Challenge Global and currently serves on the board of Startup Champions Network, the Institute for Work and the Economy, and has served on over a dozen nonprofit boards in her local community, ranging from the arts to education and entrepreneurship. She's a former travel industry professional who has lived, worked, and traveled throughout the world. Her favorite person is her son, JD, who is currently exploring and enjoying his own global adventures, though Bruce Springsteen is high on her list as well. So together in this conversation, we address her role as an ecosystem builder, the components of an ecosystem, that people are really the new companies. We also look at different levels of engagement in mass collaboration, the importance of communication, and so much more. So let's talk to Cecilia. Hi, Cecilia. So good to see you. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation about ecosystem building. Just the term itself, it's like, sounds mysterious and exciting at the same time. I think if we think about entrepreneurs, and I usually talk about ecosystems in terms of, just like the web and the website and all the marketing around it is an ecosystem. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about collaboration and partnership and that kind of ecosystem. So I'm really excited and looking forward to our chat. So why don't you start with explaining what ecosystem means to you and what your role is as an ecosystem builder?
Ecosystem building is such a buzzword these days. And back in 2017, when I got invited to this convening, I didn't know what the heck it meant, right? And now it's what I do. So ecosystem building, to me, ecosystem builders connect people seeking resources with the people that have them. So it's identifying, engaging, and supporting people and organizations to connect and move forward in collaborative ways. It's a little bit different, there's a difference between connectors and networkers. I think of networkers as the people that go about to events and they pass out business cards like they're shuffling, like blackjack deck. And it's like, oh, I got a card, and then this big stack, and then they never do anything with them. And that you may be networking, but you're not actually doing the connecting, right? So, and with an entrepreneur's journey, it goes from ideation to revenue, and that path in between ideation and revenue, that's that valley of death where companies go to die or they go to flourish. And the job of an entrepreneur is to navigate that chasm as quickly as they can before they run out of energy and funding and they burn out and, the sanity factor. And each one's path is very unique. And so ecosystem builders help them guide and navigate. And maybe we don't know the whole path, but maybe what we can do is get them 2 or 3 steps faster or in the right direction, so they don't go wandering around and fall into the rabbit holes and get stuck. So that's what I see as the role of an ecosystem builder. And my role for the past few years has been more across nationally in the United States and on a global level. So I've had the honor and the privilege of working with ecosystem builders worldwide and connecting them to each other and fostering collaboration across those borders. So I think part of the idea of an ecosystem is that is it ecosystem developer? Is it ecosystem whatever? Is it even with ecosystem? And I think that now that the word has caught on, I just want to get past that. Let's not argue about the terminology anymore, right? The world is saying those words. So let's just take it. And I think of a builder, somebody who builds, takes the resources that they have and the plans that are in place and executes on them. So they start building. And just like a good foundation or a structure, it has a framework, it has scaffolding. So done is we helped foster this scaffolding for the top down and the grassroots, the bottom up, to meet in the messy middle and to work together in a way that actually helps give some effort to the structure, right? Scaffolding should be flexible, because you don't know which way you're going to go. Sometimes you need to, as a builder, shore up one side because it's a little weaker on that side. And it's more like a guardrail. It's not meant to be there forever, right? But at least when there's scaffolding, they all build in a direction with momentum, as opposed to these disparate measures. We think grassroots is great, and grassroots efforts are really important. But unless you have some support structure, it just kind of dissipates, right? And it goes into those rabbit holes.
Sorry, can you give some examples of these structural things that are part of the building and the scaffolding?
Yeah, so what we've come up with are these Eship Goals, these 7 pillars, let's say, of the things that you should think about as you're building or firming up a community. So they were based really loosely on the UN Sustainable Goals. So UN Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals or the world will implode. And if we work towards it, then we have a better world, right? That's equitable and all of those things. So the 7 Eship Goals emerged from conversations starting with about 450 to 600 people that were identified as early adopters of this. So I was very honored to have been invited to the initial event. We talked, we had these things called missions, and said, hey, if you were making this thing, that thing that you do for free, like if you were making this thing an actual profession, what would you need? And so out of those conversations evolved these 7 goals. So the 7 goals are, we start with goal number 1, which is inclusive field. So the field should have diverse perspectives, diverse experiences, diversity of demographics and major identity markers, and also the things that you can't see, so that there's greater awareness of differences, right? That we come together and actually think about the inclusion of all of these, right? It's not separate in that way. And then we go to collaborative culture, which is playing nicely in the sandbox. So now you have all of these people together, and do they play nicely in the sandbox? How do we foster that collaboration? A shared vision, goal number 3, is about having a North Star, having something where you're all aiming in a certain direction, so that we're rowing in the same direction and moving that way. So it's whether you're in the peak or the valley and wherever you're coming from, that we aim towards. And for most of this work around entrepreneurs, it's about putting entrepreneurs front and center. Now, the hard part about putting entrepreneurs front and center is, if you ask an entrepreneur what they need, the number one answer they will always give you is funding.
Right.
But if you ask an entrepreneur what they need the funding for, then they will tell you 100 different answers, right? Of what they're going to use the funding for,
Right.
because it's very unique to them. So if we have a shared vision of what we can do to eliminate those barriers towards entrepreneurship, then we're working towards that vision, that mission of here's what we do together to support. Goal 4 is connected networks. And that's where you take the people that are working in those silos and you get them to start talking to each other. Now, there's always pushback on silos. And I don't think silos are the problem. Silos are where you laser focus and get stuff done. You need to actually focus in, and you can't be all over the place. The problem is the communication between the silos. They need to be permeated in a way so that I can kind of come over, not to steal your idea, but if I get a glance, Sarah, at what you're doing, then you can see what I'm doing, and maybe we can work in tandem because our efforts are aligned. Maybe it's a sidecar. Maybe it's not. Maybe what we're looking at is, oh, you know what? You're taking care of that. I'm going to pivot and do something else. So that communication and those connected networks make us stronger. So we don't duplicate efforts. We don't overlap. There's not a scarcity mindset because you have a greater awareness of what's going on.
I love that.
Practical, right? Goal 5 is practical metrics and methods. So it's a way to measure where you are and where you want to go. If you don't know where you are and where you want to go, then you seem to go around in circles, right? Where you have no direction. And so that helps us move the efforts forward. Universal support, the idea of inviting people into the ecosystem or awareness of the ecosystem to put out messaging so that people can help support in all those ways. And then comes sustainable work. So that's goal 7. And it's about having maybe certification and accreditation so we can learn to do it better and be paid for the work that we do, right? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there wasn't a role called project management. And now there's certification, accreditation, there's a body of work and there are job descriptions. Well, we want to do the same thing with ecosystem building. Now, threaded through all of these, not as a separate goal, but threaded through all of this work is storytelling. And just like you shared in your book, it's really important to tell a story. That's how people resonate. It opens up hearts and minds. So maybe in goal 5 with practical metrics, it's more about case studies. Maybe for universal support, it's more about a public service announcement and all of those things that work together. And we have some great people who have been writing stories specifically about ecosystem builders.
There's so much in there, and I want to unpack it a bit. Just in general, it's interesting because when I hear ecosystem and when I hear scaffolding and I kind of hear, building the foundations, I think like processes and, kind of structural things and all these like very pragmatic things. And what's so beautiful about what you just described is that these are all kind of intangible things, but they are what are the most important things of entrepreneurship. So how did these discussions, I'm so curious how these 450 people all agreed that this is the most important thing and not like, you have to have an accounting system and you have to have, I don't know, like, all these things that we usually think about when we're building a business. And you went, like most of the goals are kind of like, emotional intelligence, and let's collaborate and let's be diverse and let's think to create partnerships. So how did these discussions go in that direction, do you think?
I think that the people that came to, so the Kauffman Foundation based in Kansas City is probably the most recognizable foundation globally around entrepreneurship. And Mr. Kauffman's legacy was to support entrepreneurs. And about 5 years ago or more, Victor Huang, who was the author of The Rainforest, wrote the book about the rainforest and back in 2011, I believe it was, and talked about the idea that environments to foster entrepreneurship should look more like rainforests and not like plantations. Mm-hmm. And so there's a wonderful podcast, TED Talk that you can pull up. The year before that, the first time that entrepreneurial ecosystem was used recognizably was when Dan Eisenberg from Babson wrote a Harvard Business Review article and used the term entrepreneurial ecosystem. So it started to take place. I feel like we're about a decade into a movement, and 20 and 30 years it takes for a movement to take place, right? The Industrial Revolution did not happen overnight. It was a series of events. So you had Dan Eisenberg write that article, you had Victor Huang write the book, Brad Feld wrote Startup Communities, and we were off, right? And in 2017, Victor was the vice president of entrepreneurship at the Kauffman Foundation at the time. And the whole rally cry of the foundation was, let's eliminate the barriers. Let's make it easier. People should be able to be entrepreneurs. And what do we need to do that? And the recognition from about 2011, also around 2011, 2012, was when the Obama administration had put in as part of their jobs initiative, the effort to help support entrepreneurs. So their BHAG, their big, hairy, audacious goal was to support 100,000 startups. And in an effort to support 100,000 startups, they realized that 7 people in DC weren't going to get that done. So they started recognizing people in their own communities that were doing this work, right? To people now who I now call my friends, right? Andy Stoll, who's now working at the foundation, Trey Bowles in Dallas, Enoch Elwell in Chattanooga, Larkin Garby in Richmond, like all of these people all over across the United States. There are about 24 people that they brought together, and what we'll now call ecosystem builders, right? The early ecosystem builders. And they brought them together in a group and with an effort between the Kauffman Foundation, the Obama administration, Case Foundation, from Steve Case, the founder of AOL, Techstars with Brad Feld, Up Global, which was an organization at the time. Like they all came together and they would meet and they would talk about best practices and they would learn from each other. And then they would go back into their communities and do it better, faster, all of those things. But, while they brought all these systems and processes together, it was really about the network that they created, right? Mm-hmm. That relationship, that trust. Mm-hmm. And when the administration changed and the program folded, Startup America, which is this group, this team of people, they they went off and rolled off and became an organization, which I now sit on the board of, called Startup Champions Network. So Startup Champions are people like me and you who work around entrepreneurs and help support them and get them a little bit further. Some run incubators, some run accelerators, some run co-working spaces, some work for the government. We have some that work in libraries that help entrepreneurs. So however you help support those networks, coming together and creating that relationship, like you talked about, those are important. Going back to the idea of systems and processes, there's a lot of thought leaders that have emerged this work, not particular to ecosystem building as far as entrepreneurs go, but people who used processes to optimize efforts. So principles that you find in the work of Donella Meadows, Thinking in Systems, Peter Senge. There are a lot of thought leaders that have emerged some parts of this along the way. So as good entrepreneurs do, we've taken ideas that have worked in other places and we've adapted them to see how we can increase. So the challenge of that is, we talk about intangibles or soft skills, and we make it sound like soft skills are not as important.
Yeah,
I don't
they're
think
like
that
a nice to have, right? They're considered.
Right. It's the fluff, right?
Yeah.
The ecosystem building is very woo-woo.
Yeah.
When you talk about economic development, it's like, if we get it, great, but like really we want to focus on this other stuff.
Yeah, we want results, right?
Right. Well, so the thing about results is those are the things that are measured. So I think my challenge to the people who measure is, you know what? I think you should start figuring out ways to measure what we call intangibles. I don't think that they're intangible as much as they're unmeasured. Right. See, we don't have a metric for it.
We're just not used to measuring those things that we think right now are intangibles. But in 10, 15 years, people are going to say, are you crazy that you never measured those things?
Absolutely.
And we're talking like, employee happiness, customer happiness, like those kind of
absolutely
life
it's all
balance,
of those things.
All of these things that now.
So a lot of the focus that I have in my work personally is around culture, awareness, and mindset. So those are the three things that I really focus on. It's how you connect, engage, and create a relationship of belonging. So it's we don't think about how we approach these efforts and these processes. We're always focused on the outcomes and the outputs. Yeah. Well, it's the way you get there that I think is really important. That's true. We talk about teaching entrepreneurial mindset, but then we focus on unicorns, right? Unicorns are those mythical things that turn into companies like Amazon and Facebook. But if you focus on the entrepreneur and you focus on their mindset and their adaptability and their culture, you create serial entrepreneurs. And then you get somebody more like Richard Branson, who has a myriad of businesses, right? So I think that we focus on the wrong things. We focus on the thing that they do instead of the way they do it, right? So I think it's like people that race to a destination and they never enjoy the views along the journey, right? And they got there. They don't know how they got there. They can't necessarily do it again, right? But they got there, yay. And then
they got there and maybe they're burned out when they got there.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. They burn out. They've not created relationships along the way. They got to the end and then they're very alone and they're very tired and they don't know how to sustain it. Because what I find with a lot of founders is they're founders, they're builders, they're creators, but they're not maintainers. So now they've created this company and they don't want to run it. They just want to go off and do something else, right? So it's so counterintuitive. So because everything moves at the speed of trust, we've created this collaboration triangle. In thinking about how we get to mass collaboration, which is the goal, right? So the idea of mass collaboration is that people are working together. We're firing on all pistons. Everybody's rowing in a good direction, in the same direction, and things are getting done. But it takes a lot to get there. And our collaboration triangle starts with an invitation. Invitations should be very specific. A great book about just that subject would be like Priya Parker's book, The Art of Gathering. Mm-hmm. When you gather people, you need to let them know what they're coming for, right? You can cast the net very wide and invite thousands of people. But you need to know when they come, like at the first Eship Summit, you're coming here because it's about ecosystem building. We know that you do other stuff, right? But here, when we get together, this is what we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. Then people have that expectation. They understand. It's like inviting somebody to a party and you don't tell them whether it's cocktail attire or costume, right? And
in which example would that be happening where we don't know what the invitation is about?
I think that when people say, let's work together, and then they don't know,
specific.
right? Where they don't know what they're working together for, or say, oh, we help entrepreneurs. I know lots of organizations that say we help entrepreneurs. Well, what kind of entrepreneurs do you help? Are you helping mission-based Main Street businesses? Are you doing high-tech, high growth? Are you doing social ventures? Are you coming at it where is it an accelerator or an incubator? Because those two things are not the same
in the invitation.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you tell them what they're there for, people can opt in or opt out, right? But they know that when they come, this is what they're working towards. And then if they're not working towards that, then you can say, you know what, maybe this is not the place for you. And we've worked so hard to be all things to all people that now nobody's happy. You're not happy with what you do because you're not working in your zone of genius. And people are coming here. They don't know. They thought you were going to do this. And then that level of expectation happens. And then it's disappointment, all of those things. So invitations are bold and intentional, right? Then from that invitation, we start creating community. And community is a sense of belonging and relationships, and where people are just starting to weave together. And as I mentioned, everything moves at the speed of trust. So you're fostering that relationship, right? Getting to know each other. We start talking to each other, learning about each other. What is it that you're interested in, Sarah? Let me share what I'm doing, right? And then with that comes trust. The funny thing about belonging and trust is it takes a couple of things to create a sense of belonging. Daniel Coyle talks about the culture code. He says it's time, right? It's time that you spend together. It's a specific focused energy on you as a unique individual. The fact that, Sarah, I know that you work not only in marketing, but in general marketing, right? And you have a different approach that I recognize that about you. You now feel a little bit more trust in me because I've taken the time to invest and know more about you.
That's right. Then, we hear and see each other as human beings and not just as leads.
Yes.
As so many marketing people still do, right? Let me collect leads. Well, what is a lead to you? Is that just a person with a dollar sign on their face?
Absolutely, yes.
That's
what it becomes, right? It's very dehumanizing and it's very transactional. So what we're doing is creating that relationship. The third part of belonging cues are a future set. So if I say to you, Sarah, look forward to seeing you on Sunday at our weekly session, and then we're like, oh yes, and we're connected and we have a future together. So as we're creating these communities, there's trust being built. And then comes communication and visibility. And I don't know if you've often heard, people say, you're not being transparent. Well, sometimes it's not a matter of hiding something. It's that we haven't gotten to the community part where I know enough about you that I can answer the question that you ask me, right? People used to say to me when I was a consultant at the foundation, so what's going on at the Kauffman Foundation? I don't know. I don't work at the Kauffman Foundation. I work as a consultant. I work in a very specific segment of a very specific department, which is part of a really large place. There's a whole nother wing of the building I've never been in, right? Even when I used to go every month. So I don't have that community. I can't, it's not, I'm hiding something, right? It's not being transparent. It's really understanding. So the communication has to be clearer. And the only way we get to clearer communication is by building those relationships. So now we get to the visibility. Then I see what you're doing, you see what I'm doing, we know a little bit more about each other, and then the communication flows, right? So then it's like streams of relational communication. Then comes coordination and alignment. See, so now that there is all of this information going back and forth, now we can better convey the things that we need. So there's alignment. Alignment in communities are like traffic laws. You don't have to follow the traffic laws, but if you don't follow them, you're greater chance of crashing, right? It takes clear communication, like the traffic signs, so you know which direction to go in. And as we coordinate, then we talk about what I mentioned earlier, that connected network, that permeating silos, that ability to go, oh, let's go this way. No, I'm going this way. And so this alignment happens where there's a free flow, but we're not constantly crashing or overlapping or duplicating. You know, those people that go the wrong way down a one-way street or drive 70 miles an hour down a side street? Most of the time, it goes all the way back to the community thing. They don't care because they don't have a relationship with the community. It's easier for me to get from point A to point B by going really fast, as quickly as I can, in the shortest direction. But I don't do that because as part of a community, we found out that if we navigate these streets differently, then it's safer. The community is better off, right? Kids can play and you don't have to worry about the cars coming the other way. But that all goes back down to that community part. When you feel like you're part of a community, then you're more apt to coordinate and align. And so then you get to collaboration. The funny thing about this triangle was it looked very much like a pyramid, like a Maslow thing to get to actualization. And then a friend of mine who works with inclusive ecosystems, Faye, who works at Forward City, said, you know, I've always thought of Maslow being really upside down because when you self-actualize, you're actually greater than you started. And so we flipped this triangle upside down and said, wow, this is the way collaboration happens because collaboration is greater than yourself.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true. That I've never heard that before, but it's so true. The Maslow's pyramid should also be on its head. I think, I think it's just time that we turn all these kind of existing systems on their head, because you're right. It's just, that's where the growth is. It's in the collaboration. And I think this pyramid or triangle can totally be applied to, yes, ecosystem building and community building. It can be applied to marketing because marketing is communication. And if you communicate, you get alignment and then you get collaboration. So it can be applied to so many levels and different things in entrepreneurship that, I think it really makes sense. I want to also mention one sentence that kind of stood out to me in the resources that you sent me. And you said that people, or it wasn't you, but it was in the document, people are the new companies. So as we start to wrap it up here, I'd like you to comment on, this idea of people being the new companies. We talked about mainly about entrepreneurs and startups. How do the 7 goals and how does the triangle apply to, the bigger corporations where maybe right now the people don't feel like they have some of these things that we just mentioned? Do you think those kind of people will be the new companies going forward? Like thinking about millennials, right? They don't want to work in these big corporations anymore. So is that what this phrase means to you, or what does it mean to you?
It's a funny thing when you talk about, because studying in the cultural values that I've studying about millennials and their exit, right? 60 some odd percent of millennials are always looking for another job. Right. So the term of how long they stay in companies are like 3 years. So, but the interesting thing about it, I don't think that what they're seeking is another job or another company. No. It's about seeking purpose. Right. And so what happens is it's become such a transactional nature, right? Where companies are looking for your outputs. They want you to work X amount of hours for X amount of pay, and then give me X amount of product and we're good. And there's not, and I don't think that, the work-life balance to me is not like a ping pong table in the break room, right?
Or that's the gym downstairs and the childcare. Right. That's how they got you to work even more, right? Right. They're like, we'll provide everything. You just stay here night and day, and we got you covered.
I think that the beautiful thing, and people are hot and cold about companies like Google. But when you look at companies like Google that have allotted a period of time for you to work on your own project. Now, the cynics among us have said, oh, but then it becomes part of their intellectual property, and then you become, that for the company. And I'm like, but they get to work on the thing that they want. Mm-hmm. See? And it's not that one gets over on the other one, right? But if you're in a corporation that says, hey, if you come up with an idea and we can help support the growth in the idea, and you become an entrepreneur, right? You can work in a big corporation and have that idea flourish, and you get something out of it and we get something out of it, and it's a win-win. I think that's a beneficial thing. You get the support that you need and the security from working in a large organization. In the meantime, the organization gets innovation and creativity out of its employees. Everybody is happy, right? We started looking for wins and losses, and we started looking for, how one is more advantageous than the other. And it became transactional, and it lacked that beneficial thing. And I know you and I are part of a group when we talk about that Adam Smith quote about the butcher and the baker, and it's not through their benevolence, but their own self-interest. You know what? People should be centered on the things that they need. Things that they need and want and desire does not have to impede on you. That's the scarcity mindset, right? Mm-hmm. There is no reason. We're not fighting over the same pie. We're actually fighting over the visibility of our pie. You know what? That's you can bake pie. I can bake pie. We can make some cookies. We'll have some cupcakes and cake, along the way. So all of that, like, when you talk about people at the new companies, back in the day, before the Industrial Revolution, butchers and bakers and all kinds of shops started to create businesses. You didn't have to do all of those things. You could go and exchange your currency for that product, or product for product. Then with these larger scales, as we moved into cities and really focused on efficiencies during the Industrial Revolution, then these big monoliths became, huge. Along the way, we lost track of people because we focused on product and output and efficiency and mass production and mass consumption and all of those things. Well, the people got lost along the way, and the people are wanting to be heard or feel purposeful. Entrepreneurs execute their dreams. Some entrepreneurs don't necessarily work for themselves. Some work in organizations. And it's having that organization remember to value you, right? So when people are the new companies, they know that if they can't operate in this big system, they can go off on their own, because you know what? Technology has caught up. Globalization has happened. So I can be a solopreneur and go out and do the thing that I meant to do and be supported. And now I can scale. I can connect with wider audiences. So I don't need those structures. The thing is, economic development, the model is largely based on that industrial age model. And now it's evolving, right? Economic development people are starting to look at ecosystems as not that other thing that's going to combat the thing that we're trying to do, but it's an evolution. Like we're working together to find out what the new thing is. So I love the idea of being able to work and merge and grow that together.
I agree with that. And I almost think that the new generation, so if we take that phrase, people are going to be the new companies, yes, they will either become entrepreneurs, they have their own companies, or they just change the companies. Not or, and they will change the existing companies, right? And they will implement these 7 goals into the existing companies that just don't feel good anymore, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what we don't know when, but it will happen faster than we think. Seeing the evolution that we're already seeing signs everywhere that that's what's going to happen.
I think it's already happening, right?
It's
emerging. And the idea of these 7 Eship goals are they're fractal. So they can be used for small communities of 100 people. They can be used for companies. They can be used for organizations. They can be used in large scale in New York City, that kind of thing. Exactly. So the idea is that you can take it and adapt it. And those are what good tools and frameworks are, right? It's adaptable. So you and I are in the Bento Society. We take this framework and we adapt it every week. And yours does not look like mine, but we can use the same format. That's what tools are supposed to be.
Exactly.
Right?
It's not the 7-step system that you apply and you become successful if you follow what I did. It's like, here's a framework, but you have to find your own answers.
Absolutely.
They're not written down here. Yeah. I would love for you to share where people can find out more about the ecosystem, the 7 goals and everything you talked about, and also more about you and what you do, the work you do with people.
Well, thank you. So the current playbook, the ecosystem building playbook, and by the way, since all of this started, there are several other playbooks. So there are a lot of organizations that are putting out playbooks. The Kauffman ecosystem building playbook is currently in the 3rd draft. It's supposed to be a living document and kind of emerging. Since then, I know the Air Force has put out a playbook and other organizations have put out playbooks, right? Which is wonderful. Yeah. Yes. The Ecosystem Builder Hub is a repository of ecosystem builder stories. So you get to hear about, there's a whole series called Unsung Heroes. So the people that you don't necessarily see up on stage, but the people who make the things happen. And it's a wonderful repository that's supported by my friend Jeff Bennett, and where those of us who tend to write stuff, we'll submit it and then he'll put up a collection. And then I have a personal website. It's just Cecilia Wessinger, ceciliawessinger.me. That's who I am. There are wonderful organizations like Startup Champions Network, the Global Entrepreneurship Network, NBIA, Startup Commons, which is global. People are really, it's catching on, right? Mm-hmm. And we're about a decade or more into this movement where people are starting to recognize that it's not as much fun to do it alone. You're not as productive. You're not as engaged. So when we talk about things like partnerships and collaboration, you don't have to have a big P partnership with the official document and paperwork and all of that. You can just work together. It could be on a project. It could be just in conversation. And I think that it's you're smarter together. So one of the things that I used to say when I was working around the people at the foundation is, I've long learned that there are no answers at the Kauffman Foundation. There are some answers. There are great notions. There's wonderful research being done and more information being put out, but there's not an answer room at the Kauffman Foundation. Believe me, I've looked, right? But it's like all of us have parts of the answer. Mm-hmm. And together, we're going to answer more questions than we even know how to ask them. So it's just the collective hive mind of all of the people that you know. That's why even if you're a solopreneur, you need to get out of the basement or the garage and you need to go talk to people. And you need them to ask you questions, hard questions and easy questions, not because they want to challenge your assumptions, but so that you get stronger in what you do. If you can't answer the questions that they ask you and you get frustrated, maybe you don't know the answers well enough.
Yeah, I think that's so important to remind, even, like you said, just solopreneurs. I mean, just the word itself, it's sad, right? It's like you're alone. And for too long have we, spent just too much time by ourselves, not wanting to collaborate with others because we think, oh, it's my business, it's my clients, it's mine, where in fact, so much more can be done if we, collaborate and partner together.
Absolutely. My lovely friend Annika Horn and some other friends of hers globally, one in Germany, I think one in England, they've convened some people together, and it's solopreneurs working together. So there are pockets of things that are happening.
Oh, and it will continue to happen even more. I'm sure of it. Yeah. This has been beautiful. Really delighted to have you had on the show. I always ask a last question, Cecilia. What are you grateful for today?
What am I grateful for today? Well, thank you. That's it's a great question to ask every time. I'm grateful for people. I'm grateful for communities of people that foster belonging. As a first generation immigrant twice, it's been really hard to fit in. And when I felt that feeling like you belong somewhere or belong with people, it's a really powerful feeling. And it's a driving force for everything I do. So I'm grateful for my fellow ecosystem builders, my high school classmates that I get on a call with every week since the pandemic started.
So nice.
My Springsteen friends that have gone to concerts with me all over the world, people like you that I've met at the Bento Society there. And I'm most grateful for my son and his lovely girlfriend and the little human being that they're going to bring into the world next fall. So that's what I'm most
news.
grateful for.
That's big news. Congratulations. Yay.
It is. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And I'm grateful for this time together. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. This has been really, really wonderful. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Cecilia. You'll find the show notes of this episode with further links, the screenshots, and everything else we talked about at sarahsinacroce.com/GBR86. Please check out Cecilia's website at ceciliawessinger.me, or also check out the Ecosystem Builder Hub for more information on ecosystem building. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this episode. I invite you to download your one-page marketing plan with the gentle marketing version of the 7 Ps of marketing at sarahsinacroce.com/one-page. It comes with the 7 email prompts to really help you reflect on these different Ps. And also, I think you'll get a better understanding on how we organize the conversations on this podcast. Next week, I'm talking to Christoph Trape about live streaming. So be back for that one. In the meantime, let's be the change we want to see in the world. Take care.